This question from our chapter 20 packet. We're going to pretty much do everything for a one proportion z-test, but we are not going to make the assumptions or check the conditions, but make sure if you're watching at home that you do that so you get full credit on these questions. All right, so this question says we have a union spokesperson claims that 75% of union members will support a strike if their basic demands are not met. So right now we think the best ratio or proportion or percentage of all the union members that would go on strike is 75%. Now there's a company negotiator, so somebody who works for the other side, that believes that the percentage is actually not that. That's below 75%. The company negotiator does their own sample, asks some union members if they'll go on strike or not, like right now. We have to see if there's any evidence to the company negotiator's claim. All right, so the first thing we have to do is define the parameter. So let P, what's our population proportion here? What am I going to write? That's exactly right. It is going to be that. You guys are both right. So we're starting with the statement, Brian, to say what we're going to say P is. We're going to get to the actual number. But in general, you want to define what is your letter P. So that way when we make our conclusion at the end, we understand what we've been talking about. So Ivana's right. Let P represent the proportion of all union members who will support a strike, or who will go on strike, or anything about going on strike if their demands are not met. Okay, so this is always the first thing you want to do before you get into actually saying what number you're going to use, what percentage you're going to use. Any questions on defining the parameter? Okay, what is next? Kelly, what do we have to do next after we define the parameter? Very good, the hypothesis. So Kelly, what are we going to use for our null hypothesis? What do we think right now is the best idea for the proportion of union members who will go on strike? That's exactly right. So we do P equals 0.75. Now, as I said on Wednesday, whenever you're doing your null hypothesis, I should always see an equal sign. Even when we move into different types of tests, it will still always be an equal sign. For the alternative, Cecilia, what do you want to use for the alternative hypothesis? What are we trying to prove here? Very good. We're trying to prove, or I guess we should say the company negotiator is trying to prove that this rate is actually lower than 75%. All right? Now, at this point, right, this is when you would make your assumptions. And check your conditions. Now, as I said, today I just want to focus on the big picture, making sure you guys feel confident that you can do this, especially the mathematics, the mechanics on your own. But don't forget to do this for the exit ticket and the quiz. All right? Don't forget to do these steps. Okay, so let's get to the math. We have a sample size of 125 union members. Our number of successes was 87. Said they would go on strike. So our P hat which is going to be that fraction. I guess I should do it in decimals so everybody can see. So you guys can use your yellow calculator since you're in here. And you should divide 87 over 125. Okay, so 87 over 125, 0.696. So that is called our sample proportion. So we call that p hat. Okay, now in terms of the actual test statistic that we care about, we are using a normal model, right? This is a one proportion z-test. So I'm going to write z equals p hat minus p over the standard deviation of p hat. That formula is the square root of p times q over n. Now again, you don't have to memorize these. You'll get these every time. Use your notes. All right, so let's plug in what we know. We know 0.696 is p hat. We already said in our hypotheses that the population proportion is 0.75. So over the square root of 0.75 times 0.25 over the sample size of 125. Okay, so you guys can use your yellow calculator. Utilize that N over D fraction button. That fraction button will definitely help. I'm going to show in Desmos how to do it. All right, so we have 0.69675 all over square root of 0.75 times 0.25 over 125. All right, so hopefully in your yellow calculators, you guys can confirm you get the same thing as I do. Do you want me to zoom in? I'll zoom in. Did you get that? Yes, excellent though. Good job. Got it, Eva? Awesome. Juliana, did you get it? Yes, you did, even without typing into a calculator? What did you say? In your brain. Wow. Incredible. You can do all that in your brain? The square root of 0.75 times 0.25 over 125. That is amazing. I'm impressed. All right, so the z-score is negative 1.394. It does, yes, because basically, remember what Cecilia said about the alternative hypothesis, right? The company negotiator believes the percentage is lower, so we're trying to see if this is actually what we should go with, something below 75%. So ultimately, if we're trying to prove that it's below 75%, we would expect our sample proportion to be lower than 75%. So because it is, you can look up there and see it's like 69.6%. That's why it's a negative z-score. So that doesn't surprise me. If my alternative hypothesis says less than, I'm expecting a negative z-score. If I don't have a negative z-score, but my alternative hypothesis says something like greater than, then I'll be a little confused. Okay? Okay, let's make our sketch. Don't need to make it very big. Just small sketch is fine. Come on. All right, now where am I going to draw negative 1.394? Where do I need to make sure to put that? The middle is actually 0. Right down the middle is a z-score of 0, right? The mean is a z-score of 0. So it's got to be to the left. But you don't need to go like super far, right? Negative 1.394. Let's say somewhere like here. Again, just a sketch. I'm just looking for this to the left. And then remember what Cecilia said. She said we want to see if it's less than 0.75, so we need a shade below, which is to the left. Now I'm using green here, but it doesn't matter what color or whatever you're using. But when I use my computer to tell me what this amount of the curve is in green, do you remember what this is called from Wednesday? It's the p-value. Yvonne's over here like, this is too easy. Too easy. Okay? So ultimately, when I grade your exit ticket and I grade your quiz, I'm looking for a lot of stuff, but if I don't see the p-value and the test statistic, which is our z-score, cannot get full credit. So I got to show that. All right? Now, let's go to zscorecalculator.com. Now, I've used this a couple of times, and so I always include this link. I think it's helpful. All right, let me get this guy out of here. Okay, that didn't do anything, Douglas. Why would you do that? You're going to scroll. Come on. You're better than that. All right, so we're going to the left. All right, we're typing in our z-score, which is negative 1.394. I don't think it does thousands. I'm pretty confident if you put in the 4, it doesn't change it. Yeah, it doesn't. So just, when you go here, just do hundredth place. And we're shading to the left so you can see our p-value is 0.082. All right, so p-value 0.082. Okay? Now, before I get to the conclusion, I want to have a brief little conversation, and I think this is what you were asking about on Wednesday, Yvonne, about something called the alpha level. All right, so this little symbol is called alpha. Now, I know it looks like a little fish. So, next week, we're going to talk in great detail about alpha and how your decision in choosing, you get to choose what this value, this level is, all right? Based on your decision, it's going to kind of change a little bit about your test. But the most common alpha level that statisticians use, especially in your intro stats course, is 0.05. That's the most common one. So you can use whatever you want, but I'm just telling you, kind of like when we did, I said the 90% and the 95% confidence levels are like the most common. This is the most common alpha level. This is what we consider to be our cutoff point. All right, so I think on Wednesday when we did the smoke detector one, some of you were wondering okay, how do I know if I have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis or not enough evidence to reject it? So it's always based on this. All right, so if your p-value is above alpha, so if your p-value is over alpha, you don't have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis. If your p-value is below your alpha level, then you have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis. So for this problem, our p-value of 0.082 is actually above our alpha. So we do not have enough evidence to say that the company negotiator is correct, that it's actually below 75. We still think at this point that it's going to be 75%. So I'm going to write that as a conclusion. All right, so with a p-value above my alpha, I will fail to reject the null hypothesis. You guys learned on Wednesday that when I write my conclusions, I like to write 2 sentences, one that's super generic, like this one, and then a second sentence with the context of the problem. If you want to put them all together, go for it. Right? You could say, with a p-value above my alpha, I will fail to reject the null hypothesis that the proportion of union members who will go on strike is 75%. You can smash it all together if you want. All right, so what I'm going to say is there is not enough evidence for me to agree with the company negotiator. The proportion of union members who will go on strike is 75%. Okay, so that's kind of the way that I decided to word this when it comes to the conclusion. Again, your answer doesn't need to look exactly like this, but I will not give you full credit if it's not in context of the problem. So if you just say on your exit ticket or your quiz that the p-value is low, so I'm going to reject the null hypothesis. I can't give you full credit. You got to put it in the context of what the problem is asking. Okay, so are there any questions about this whole process? This is it. And obviously we didn't do the assumptions and conditions, but ultimately this is the process. Now I want to see, I don't know, yesterday it didn't work, so I'm going to try again today. I want to go to this website, MathCracker, which does the test for you. And I want to see if today it'll work, maybe. Let's see. MathCracker. One proportion z-test. All right, let's see if it'll work. Okay, so at least we can set it up even if it doesn't work. We always use, for the null hypothesis, we always use equal sign, okay? Cecilia told us that for our alternative, we were going to use less than. I think I heard Kelly told us this, but before that, Brian, you mentioned that the population proportion is 0.75. Our sample size was 125 union members, and we had, was it 87? 87 of those union members said they would go on strike. You got to pick a significance level. Again, the most common is 0.05, so you can use that for now. You can use 0.1, your choice. All right, let's see if it works. Fingers crossed. Come on. MathCracker. So nervous. No, we used it last year all the time. And actually the year before. Just sometimes the website just doesn't work. Maybe it's too cold outside. I've heard that. Nah, not looking good. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I feel like Anyway. All right. Well, if you kept watching, my bad.